Welcome back to Untold Revenge Files. Today, the story you're about to hear takes place in Alderton, Virginia. My name is Amelia Thornton. I'm 29 years old, and I'm sitting in a courtroom watching my own parents try to take everything I've ever earned, all to save my sister from a mess she made herself. But let me start from the beginning, because this story didn't start in a courtroom. It started at a kitchen table on the night I should have been celebrating. I work as a senior risk analyst at a mid-size financial consulting firm in Alderton. It's the kind of job people don't fully understand when you explain it at parties. I audit internal systems, flag irregularities, and make sure companies don't collapse from the inside out. It's meticulous, it's exhausting, and I'm very, very good at it. 7 months ago, I filed a whistleblower report on a client who had been systematically underreporting liabilities to federal regulators. It was a massive case. I spent nights cross-referencing data, building a paper trail so clean even the SEC couldn't ignore it. And when the dust settled, I received a whistleblower payout of $125,000. $125,000, the most money I had ever seen in my life, sitting in a settlement letter with my name on it. I remember holding that letter in my apartment, alone, with no one to call. That should tell you something right there. I had just achieved the single biggest professional and financial milestone of my life, and the only person I wanted to tell was my cat, Oliver. Because everyone else in my family would have seen that number and immediately started calculating what they were owed. And I was right. 3 days later, my mother, Vivian Thornton, and my older sister, Sarah, showed up at my door unannounced. No phone call. No, how are you? Just a sharp knock at 7:15 in the evening, and my mother's voice through the door saying, "Amelia, open up. We need to talk." My chest tightened before I even turned the deadbolt. That voice, that tone, I knew it the way animals know the rumble before an earthquake. Something was coming, and it wasn't good. They walked in without being invited. My mother sat on my couch like she owned it. Sarah stood by the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. She looked thinner than the last time I'd seen her. Stressed. There were shadows under her eyes that her concealer couldn't hide. "We heard about your payout," my mother said. No congratulations, no pride. Just the fact of the money, laid on the table like a card in a poker game. "Who told you?" I asked. That's not important. What's important is that your sister is in serious trouble and you're in a position to help." Sarah was facing an audit. Not a routine one, a forensic audit triggered by discrepancies in the accounts she managed at her real estate brokerage. There was a shortfall, a big one, and if the auditors found what I suspected they would find, Sarah wasn't just looking at losing her license. She was looking at criminal charges. "I need $100,000, Sarah said, finally speaking. Her voice was flat, not asking, telling. "If I can cover the gap before the audit closes, it goes away." I stared at her, then at my mother, then back at her. "You want my whistleblower money?" I said slowly, "to cover a financial shortfall in your own company." "It's not like that," my mother snapped. "She made a mistake. People make mistakes, Amelia. Not everyone is as perfect as you like to pretend you are." And there it was. The script I had memorized since childhood. Sarah makes a mess. Amelia cleans it up, and if Amelia hesitates, even for a second, she's selfish, she's cold, she's pretending to be better than everyone. Before I tell you exactly what happened next, tell me, what time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I'm really curious to see how far this story will travel, because I need you to understand something about my family before this story goes any further. This wasn't the first time. It wasn't even the 10th. When I was 17, I was accepted to Wharton, full ride, a scholarship that would have changed the entire trajectory of my life without a single dollar of debt. I remember my guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, calling me into her office with tears in her eyes. "Amelia, you did it," she said. I cried in that office for 10 minutes. I came home floating. I set the acceptance letter on the kitchen table in front of my parents like it was made of gold. My father, Richard Thornton, picked it up, read it, set it back down, and said, "That's great, sweetheart, but Sarah needs a car for her new job. We've been looking at a BMW. The lease is reasonable, but the down payment is steep." They took my scholarship deposit money, the money I had saved from 2 years of after-school jobs, and put it toward a down payment on a BMW 3 Series for Sarah. I didn't go to Wharton. I went to a state school. I worked 2 jobs to pay tuition. I graduated with $38,000 in student loan debt and a degree I earned with my own blood, while Sarah drove a luxury car she didn't pay for to a job she got through our father's connections. And every single time I brought it up, my mother said the same thing. Family helps family, Amelia. That's what we do. No, that's what I did. I helped. They took. Now, here they were again, in my apartment, asking for my money, for Sarah. My hands were shaking under the table, but my face was still. Years of risk analysis had taught me something invaluable. Never show your cards when the other side is desperate. Let me think about it, I said quietly. My mother's eyes narrowed. Sarah's arms tightened across her chest. There's nothing to think about, my mother said. She's your sister. I said I'll think about it. They left at 8:45. I locked the door behind them, pressed my back against it, and slid to the floor. Oliver patted over and pressed his head against my knee. I sat there for a long time. I had no idea that what I would discover next, hidden in my own credit history, would finally break me and change everything. The morning after my mother and Sarah left, I couldn't eat. My stomach was a knot of something between rage and grief, the kind of feeling that doesn't have a clean name. It's not anger, exactly. It's the sickness of realizing that the people who were supposed to love you the most have only ever seen you as a resource. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee I didn't drink and opened my laptop, not to check my email, not to look at the news. I pulled up my credit report. I don't know what made me do it that morning. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the look on my mother's face when she said, "We heard about your payout." Like she'd been tracking me. Like she'd been watching my finances the way a hawk watches a field mouse. The report loaded, and my hands went cold. There were 4 credit cards I had never opened. 4. 2 Visa cards, a MasterCard, and a department store card. All opened over the past 6 years. All using my Social Security number. All with billing addresses I didn't recognize, but that I knew. My parents' house, my parents' P.O. box. Total outstanding balance, $45,212. I sat there staring at the screen, reading the numbers over and over, waiting for them to change. They didn't. My parents had stolen my identity. For years, they had opened credit lines in my name, spent freely, and never paid them back. While I was working 60-hour weeks, grinding through student loans, building my career from nothing, they were draining me from the shadows. I closed the laptop. I opened it again. I closed it. I walked to the bathroom and threw up. Then I called Nadine. Nadine Carter was my closest friend, the kind of friend you find in your mid-20s when you've already been burned enough to know the difference between someone who loves you and someone who uses you. We met at a compliance seminar 3 years ago. She was a paralegal at a small firm in Alderton, sharp as a tack, and she had grown up in a family that made mine look functional. "Tell me what happened," she said when she picked up. I told her everything, the payout, the visit, the credit cards. By the time I finished, I was sitting on my bathroom floor for the second time in 12 hours. Nadine was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something I will never forget. "Amelia, you already know your answer. Would you accept this from a stranger? Would you let a coworker steal your identity and then show up at your door asking for more? Why are you accepting it from them?" "Because they're my family," I whispered. "No," she said. "They're people who share your blood. Family doesn't do this. You know that. You've always known that." She was right. I had always known. I had just been too afraid to act on it, too trained, too conditioned to believe that love meant sacrifice, that being the good daughter meant being the empty one. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk and I did what I do best. I built a case. I downloaded every credit report. I screenshot every fraudulent account. I printed timestamps, transaction records, billing statements. I organized them into a folder on my desktop labeled Insurance. And then I did something else. Something that had been forming in the back of my mind like a quiet tide. I called Sarah. "I'll help you," I said. My voice was calm, measured, professional. I could hear the relief flood through the phone. Thank God, Mom said you'd come around. But we have to do this carefully, I continued. If I just wire you $100,000, it's going to trigger IRS scrutiny. A payout like mine is already flagged. A large transfer to a family member right after? That's a red flag the size of a billboard. Sarah paused. So what do we do? I've structured a workaround. It's tax compliant, but you'll need to sign an affidavit stating that the funds represent repayment for an inadvertent withdrawal from your company's operating account. That way, the transfer reads as a reimbursement, not a gift. No tax event, no flags. I said it the way I said everything at work, with authority, with precision, with just enough jargon to make it sound unquestionable. Sarah didn't hesitate. Fine. Send me the document. She didn't read it carefully. She didn't ask a lawyer. She didn't even ask what inadvertent withdrawal actually meant in legal terms. She just wanted the problem to go away. She signed the affidavit the next day, notarized it at a UPS store near her office, sent me a scanned copy with a text that said, "Done. When's the money coming?" I saved the scan in my insurance folder, because what Sarah had just signed was not a tax workaround. It was a time-stamped, notarized confession that she had withdrawn funds from her company's accounts. Funds that weren't hers. In legal terms, she had just confessed to embezzlement, in writing, with a witness. I never sent the money. 2 days later, my phone started ringing. My mother, my father, Sarah. Then numbers I didn't recognize. Then a voicemail from my father that said, "If you don't answer, we're calling the police. We'll tell them you're having a mental episode. We'll have you evaluated." They did it. They actually called the authorities and requested an emergency psychiatric hold. Said I was erratic, delusional, a danger to myself. 2 officers showed up at my apartment that evening. I opened the door in a pressed blouse and slacks. I offered them water. I showed them my work ID, my recent performance review, my clean apartment. I was calm. I was articulate. I was exactly what a person having a psychiatric crisis is not. One of the officers looked at me and said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry to bother you. This appears to be a family dispute." They left. I closed the door, and I opened my laptop one more time. I had one more move to make, one I had set in motion over a year ago, long before the whistleblower payout, long before the credit cards, long before any of this. A move that even Nadine didn't know about yet. The next morning, I woke up exhausted but steady. My eyes were dry, my jaw was set. For the first time in 29 years, I wasn't trying to earn my family's love. I was done performing for people who only applauded when I was bleeding. It was time to protect myself. Months passed, quiet months, working months, the kind of months where nothing looks dramatic from the outside, but everything is shifting underneath. I threw myself into my career with a focus that surprised even me. My supervisor, Daniel Marsh, nominated me for a leadership development program at the firm. I completed it in 4 months. By the end of the quarter, I had been promoted to Director of Internal Compliance, the youngest person to hold the title in the company's history. My salary jumped, my confidence followed, but the real work was happening off the clock. Nadine connected me with an attorney named Gregory Hale, a quiet, methodical man who specialized in financial fraud and family law. He was the kind of lawyer who didn't raise his voice because he didn't need to. His evidence did the talking. I brought him everything: the credit card fraud, the identity theft documentation, Sarah's signed affidavit, and one more thing, the thing I hadn't told anyone about yet. 14 months earlier, while researching tax lien auctions for a client project, I had stumbled across something that stopped my heart. My parents' home, the house I grew up in, the house where my scholarship money was stolen, the house where I was taught that my only value was what I could give, was listed in a county tax lien sale. They had fallen behind on property taxes, 3 years behind. I didn't buy it as Amelia Thornton. I formed a single-member LLC called Ridgeline Holdings, and I purchased the tax lien through that entity, quietly, legally, without a word to anyone. Under Virginia law, the property owner has a redemption period to pay the delinquent taxes and reclaim the lien. My parents didn't redeem it. They didn't even know it had been purchased. They were too busy spending money on credit cards that had my name on them. The redemption period expired 11 days after Sarah signed her affidavit, which meant that Ridgeline Holdings, which meant I, now held the deed to my parents' house. When I told Gregory, he leaned back in his chair and looked at me for a long time. "You planned this," he said. It wasn't a question. "I prepared for it," I corrected. "There's a difference." He nodded slowly. "There is, and it's an important one." During those months, I also found something I hadn't expected. Peace. Not the dramatic, cinematic kind, the slow kind. The kind that comes from eating dinner alone and not feeling guilty about it. From waking up on a Saturday without a knot in my stomach, wondering what crisis my family would manufacture next. I joined a support group for adults who had been estranged from their families. I expected it to be sad. It was, sometimes, but mostly it was full of people who had chosen themselves for the first time in their lives and were learning how to live with the freedom and the grief that came with it. A woman named Tessa, who was about my mother's age, said something one evening that I wrote down and taped to my bathroom mirror. "You're not mourning the people they are. You're mourning the people they should have been. And that's the hardest grief there is, because there's no funeral for it." I cried that night. Hard. Not because I was broken, but because I was finally letting myself feel what I had buried for years. The girl who got into Wharton and watched her dream get traded for a car. The teenager who worked 2 jobs while her sister posted photos of her BMW on social media. The daughter who was never once told, "We're proud of you, Amelia," without it being followed by, "Now here's what we need." Have you ever grieved someone who's still alive? That's what estrangement feels like. It's a death without a body, a loss without a casket, and the world doesn't send you flowers for it. Meanwhile, I heard things. Small things, filtering through distant relatives and old acquaintances. Sarah's audit had closed, badly. Her brokerage license was suspended pending investigation. My father had been forced into early retirement after his company downsized. My mother's social circle, the women she lunched with, the church group she performed generosity for, had started asking questions. "Where's Amelia? Why doesn't she come around? What happened?" My mother, I was told, had started telling people I was going through something, that I had become difficult, that she was giving me space. The performance of a concerned mother played to an audience that was slowly stopping to believe it. Then came the arbitration filing. My parents, through their attorney, filed a motion requesting access to my whistleblower payout. The claim was extraordinary in its audacity. They argued that as my parents, they had contributed to my education and career development, and were therefore entitled to a share of any financial windfall I received. They also claimed emotional distress caused by my sudden and unexplained estrangement. Sarah joined the filing. She claimed I had promised her the money and then reneged, causing her financial harm and professional damage. They wanted $125,000, all of it. Gregory called me when the papers arrived. His voice was the calmest I'd ever heard it. "They just walked into a room they can't walk out of," he said, "and they don't even know it yet." Knowing they had filed against me should have felt like a punch. Instead, it felt like the last piece clicking into place. I wasn't angry. I wasn't afraid. I was ready. I wondered, is this what it feels like to stop running? To finally turn around and face the storm? Not with fists, but with the truth? The arbitration hearing took place on a Tuesday morning in October, the kind of crisp, golden morning that feels too beautiful for the ugly things humans do to each other. I arrived early. Navy suit, hair pulled back, folder in my hands. Gregory Hale beside me, carrying a leather briefcase that contained, as he put it, the entire architecture of their undoing. My parents were already seated when I walked in. My mother wore pearls as if dressing for church. My father sat rigid, jaw clenched, staring straight ahead. Sarah was next to them, fidgeting with her phone, her leg bouncing under the table. For a moment, just a moment, I felt the old pull, the gravity of family, the reflex that says, sit down, apologize, make it easier for them. Be the good daughter. Absorb the blow so no one else has to feel it. I sat down across from them instead. Their attorney, a man named Philip Corwin, opened with the argument I expected. Amelia had benefited from her parents' sacrifices. Amelia had made a verbal commitment to assist her sister. Amelia had caused emotional and financial harm by withdrawing from the family without explanation. He spoke for 12 minutes. It sounded rehearsed. It sounded almost convincing, if you didn't know the truth. Then Gregory stood up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't perform. He simply opened his briefcase and laid out the evidence like a surgeon laying out instruments. First, the identity theft. 4 credit cards, $45,212. Transaction records showing purchases at department stores, restaurants, a spa in Richmond, all charged to accounts bearing my Social Security number, all billed to my parents' addresses. My mother's face didn't move. My father's did. A flicker, a crack in the concrete. Second, Sarah's affidavit. The notarized document in which she stated in her own hand that funds had been inadvertently withdrawn from her company's operating account. Gregory read the relevant passage aloud, then looked at the arbitrator. "This is not a tax document," he said. "This is a signed confession of embezzlement, notarized, time-stamped, voluntarily executed." Sarah went white, not pink, not pale, white, like the blood had left her body. And then Gregory reached into his briefcase one final time. He pulled out a deed. Ridgeline Holdings, LLC, purchased the delinquent tax lien on the Thornton family residence 14 months ago, he said. The redemption period expired without action from the property owners. As of 63 days ago, the deed transferred to Ridgeline Holdings. Ridgeline Holdings is solely owned by my client, Amelia Thornton. The room went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that has weight. My mother turned to me. Her eyes were wide, her mouth opened, but nothing came out. My father spoke first. "You bought our house?" His voice was barely a whisper. "I purchased a tax lien," I said. "You had 3 years to pay your property taxes. You didn't." "Because we were using the money to—" He stopped. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. We all knew where the money went. It went to Sarah. It always went to Sarah. Philip Corwin asked for a recess. It lasted 40 minutes. When they came back, the aggression was gone. The entitlement was gone. What was left was something I had never seen on my mother's face before. Fear. Gregory presented the settlement terms. Sarah would enter a repayment agreement for the funds she had taken from her company. My parents would sign a full acknowledgement of the identity theft and begin restitution. They would vacate the house within 90 days, and all 3 of them would sign a permanent no-contact order. "If these terms are not accepted," Gregory said, his voice still level, still calm, "my client will pursue criminal charges for identity theft, and the signed affidavit will be forwarded to the appropriate regulatory authorities investigating Ms. Sarah Thornton's brokerage." My mother looked at me one last time. "After everything we did for you," she said. And even then, even at the very end, she couldn't see it. She genuinely believed she had given me something. She genuinely believed I owed her. "You still have each other," I said quietly. "I didn't take everything from you. I just stopped letting you take everything from me." They signed. All 3 of them. In silence. With shaking hands. I sold the house 2 months later. The proceeds cleared the fraudulent credit card debt, covered Gregory's fees, and left enough for a fresh start. I moved to a smaller city near the coast, a place where no one knew my last name or my family's story. I brought Oliver. I brought my folder of evidence, which I locked in a fireproof safe and hoped I would never need again. Nadine visited me on my first weekend in the new apartment. We sat on the porch with cheap wine and watched the sun go down over the water. "Do you feel like you won?" she asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," I said. "I feel like I stopped losing." She nodded. She understood. "So after everything you've heard, if you were standing where I am now, with the family who stole from you, lied about you, and tried to have you committed, asking you to forgive and come home, would you open that door and call it love? Or would you walk away and call it survival? I don't hate my parents. I don't hate Sarah. Hate requires energy, and I've spent a lifetime giving my energy to people who never valued it. What I feel now is something quieter. It's the absence of noise. It's the freedom of a phone that doesn't ring with demands. It's the peace of knowing that my name, my credit, my identity, my future belongs to me again. Love doesn't mean access. Forgiveness doesn't require reunion. And the hardest boundary you'll ever set is the one that protects you from the people who were supposed to protect you first. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in any part of my story, the kid who was always passed over, the adult who's still cleaning up messes that aren't yours, the person who's afraid that setting a boundary means being a bad daughter, a bad son, a bad person, I want you to hear this. You are not selfish for refusing to be consumed. You are not cruel for choosing yourself, and you are not alone. I am Amelia Thornton. I'm 29 years old, and for the first time in my life, I am free. And that right there is where Amelia's story ends. But maybe, just maybe, it's where yours begins. If this story hit close to home, if you felt that tightness in your chest when her parents showed up demanding that check, if you recognized that feeling of being the family ATM, the backup plan, the one who's always expected to sacrifice while everyone else takes, then you already know the truth. You don't owe your peace to people who never valued it. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now. Have you ever had a family member try to take something you worked hard for? Have you ever been the one expected to fix everyone else's mess? Tell me your story. I read every single comment, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notification, because every single week we bring you stories just like this one. Stories of betrayal, survival, and the moment someone finally says, enough. If this story moved you, smash that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight, because sometimes the right story at the right time can change everything. Until next time, protect your peace, guard your boundaries, and never forget, you are not selfish for choosing yourself. I'll see you in the next one.